Welcome back. I'm Brandon Dawkins with the Trustful Tribune here with Scott Buttram, the publisher of the Trustful Tribune, and we're getting ready to bring you our second political forum tonight for a council seat in Pinson.
We are. In fact, this is the only contested council seat in Pinson. Yes. The incumbent, Joe Cochran, is running against the incumbent mayor, Hoyt Sanders. We had both of them on last week for our forum. So this is the only open seat, and it is contested.
It is, and you and I have talked about before this that these are interesting races in Pinson because they've had a city system in place, a city government system in place for 12 years, and it's been the same folks. So this is the first changeover.
It is. A lot of good things have happened in Pinson. They've had really good leadership there. The last 4 years, they have added some significant amenities to the city, really the last 8 years when you consider the library and the Bicentennial Park. The city's going in a very good direction right now. So the rest of the incumbents were unchallenged.
Well, let's get started with our guests tonight. We have Shannon, Galamore, and Brad Walker, who are running for this seat that, as Scott mentioned, is vacated by Joe Cochran. So we're going to give y'all the opportunity to introduce yourself, as we mentioned. And Shannon, I'm going to let you go first with your opening remarks.
Hi, I'm Shannon Galamore, and I moved to Pinson when I was 10 years old. I went to Pinson Elementary, I went to Rudd Middle School, and I graduated from Pinson Valley High School. From there, I went to the University of Montevallo. I got a degree in mathematics, and then I went to University of Alabama at Birmingham and got my teaching certificate and my master's in secondary math education. I got my educational specialist degree and just recently finished my educational leadership certification from UAB. I've been teaching since 1995. In 2006, I started teaching at Pinson Valley High School. I'm the cheerleading coach at Pinson Valley High School. I've been doing that since 2007. I'm married. My husband is also an educator. He's a band director at Fultondale High School. I have two children, Kelsey and Will. Kelsey just graduated from Pinson Valley High School, and she'll be attending UAB in the fall. My son Will be a senior this year at Pinson Valley High School. I attend Palmerdale United Methodist Church. I've been a member there for several years. I've been on the finance committee there for the last 3 years. And this summer, being a teacher, having the summers off, I had the great opportunity of working at the splash pad in Pinson, at the Pinson Bicentennial Park. And while working at the splash pad, I was able to get out and meet a lot of the citizens of Pinson, and that's really what catapulted me to want to run for city council, was meeting all the wonderful citizens of the Pinson area. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Brad, you're up.
My name is Brad Walker. I'm a network engineer for Spire Energy, formerly Alagasco. My wife Jennifer and I have been a resident of Pinson for the last 20 years. My daughter Jordan will be attending Pinson High School this fall as a freshman. I've been involved with youth sports, girls softball specifically, for the last 8 years in Pinson. I was the volunteer assistant softball coach at Rudd Middle School last year, which was a great experience. And I've recently accepted a position on the Executive Booster Board at school. So I've volunteered for many charitable organizations around the city, most notably Toys for Tots, and probably less known is the Exceptional Foundation in Homewood.
Thank you both for that. And we'll go ahead and open with our first question. We'll go to Shannon, and Brad, you're going to answer the same question when Shannon gets through. Shannon, what is Pinson's single greatest accomplishment in its first 12 years as a city?
Wow, that's pretty tough. We've had a lot of great things that have happened in Pinson. We've made a lot of improvements to the Pinson Youth Park, where both of my kids played softball and baseball, and we've had the Pinson Library that they built recently, and that's going to be growing and moving over to the Rock School Center here shortly. We've had, of course, the park, and we've had so many people from, not just in Pinson, but from the surrounding communities show up at the Bicentennial Park and just marvel at how great and nice the park is. Several people have said, that it's one of the nicest ones around. We've got the splash pad there. We've got just an actual playground. We have the walking track. We've got a Frisbee golf course there. So we've had lots of things, lots of great things to happen in 12 years. It's hard for me to pinpoint just one.
Brad, the same question for you. What do you think is the single greatest accomplishment in Pinson in the last 12 years?
If I had to pick one thing, I would say it would be the library. I remember as a child growing up, I would stay with my aunt in Fultondale, and some of my favorite memories are of going to the library there in Fultondale and being able to watch the films they would show and just be able to read. I've always been an avid reader, so I think probably the library is our greatest single accomplishment.
Well, Shannon, you mentioned that you worked at the splash pad this summer. I thought that was really interesting and gave you an opportunity to talk to citizens, and that spurred your decision to run. So I'd like to hear from both of you, actually, and we'll start with Shannon, about why you did decide to run for this vacant seat.
Well, like I mentioned, when I was working at this splash pad, and I really just started working there just to give me something to do during the summer, and it really turned out to be just such a blessing to be able to work there. What I noticed and what just really made me think, you know what, I really can do something about this, was having the people come in and not knowing that the park was even there, not knowing what was available at the park, not being aware when the splash pad opened. And then just realizing that not only at this park, we have this wonderful amphitheater where we show movies in the park, we've had bands come, we've had the Pinson Valley High School Choir come, and lots of events going on there and around the city and at Turkey Creek, which is just right down the road, and not being the communication. Not having the communication between the citizens and the city council. And I really think that's something that I want to focus on, is building that communication. There's so many things that we can do that we're not utilizing to get the word out to the members of the community on what's going on in our city.
Brad, how about you? Why run?
Well, I made a run back in 2008 unsuccessfully, but I've always been very interested in government, and even from high school, which is not normal for a high school kid. And just when we decided on Pinson to be our home, to raise our family, that's what really got me started. And back in 2008 was to make a difference in our city. The current administration, or the administration for the last 12 years, has done a great job with the city. And I just think that I have something to offer the city, and I would like to be a part of the growth of that city.
Brad, we're going to continue and let you start or answer this next question first. What is the most important thing for Pinson to accomplish in the next 4 years? The single most important thing?
I think the single most important thing, I got a whole list of them. I think the single most important thing is to provide a place for our youth, not only to be safe, but to learn, and learn in a safe environment. But our kids, when we were growing up, we were all over the place. And our kids tend to congregate at the school.
Right.
And I'd like to see them have a place of their own that they can say, this is our spot. This is where we can be kids. We can grow up here, we can be with our friends and not get in trouble, and we're safe here. And I think that's probably the biggest thing we can do is to provide them that, along with the education that they get.
Thank you. Shannon, same question for you. What is the single most important thing for Pinson to accomplish as a city next year?
Well, in order for Pinson to maintain the growth and the moving forward that we have been able to do and accomplish over the last 12 years, and that is to get more revenue for the city. And the only way that we can do that is to get businesses into the city. I know you would agree with me. We want some more restaurants there. I'd like to see a hardware store there, maybe an auto parts store, a big anchor store would be fabulous if we could get one of those. But if we don't have businesses into the city generating money for our city, then we're not going to have any money. We're not going to be able to grow, and then we're going to become stagnant, and that is certainly not what we want to do.
Shannon, thank you for that. And I've got a follow-up question for that. We've been covering, the Trussville Tribune has been covering Pinson for 6, maybe 7 years now. What I have heard consistently is we need more restaurants, we need a hardware store. So I'm hearing the same things through our second municipal election. Do you have any specific ideas for how to attract these restaurants and this hardware store that people of Pinson want?
Well, and the city council that we've had for the last 12 years, they've been working to do that. They've been trying to get businesses out to come, and build in the city. The problem is, on paper, Pinson doesn't look very profitable. But what we've got to go out, and we've just got to be really aggressive. And of course, that starts at the top, being very aggressive to go out and get those businesses actually to the city. Get them to come and visit our city. Get them to visit the restaurants that are already there. Talk to the restaurant owners that are there. Find out how they're doing. Find out what their profits are. There is not a restaurant in Pinson that is hurting for people to come and eat, because we're not only serving the people of Pinson, we're serving the people from Aniana, we're serving the people from Locust Fork and Blount County. I mean, they're coming through there, and they're driving straight through Pinson, and they're going to the other cities around us, and we don't want that. We want them to stop in Pinson, eat in Pinson, shop in Pinson, spend their money in Pinson. So in order to do that, we've just got to be more aggressive than we have been in the past, because they've certainly been trying to get businesses there. We just got to be, we just got to go out and get them.
Brad, same question for you. What would you do to attract these businesses that the Pinson residents have been asking for?
Well, Scott, we're a young city still compared to the cities around us, and as we've all seen with the economy lately, retail is fickle. It comes and goes. So one of the things I would like to see is to focus on entrepreneurs. We have a great quality of life in Pinson. We are a safe city, and we have workers there. We have workers that would like to stay closer to home. And if we can attract entrepreneurs with business ideas to our city and utilize that as a catalyst to bring businesses in. As a softball coach, we travel around the state, out of the state, and we see a lot of these tournaments that we have a great part to play in, and it's being improved constantly. And bringing tournaments like that into our city would be a huge source of income and would draw businesses as well.
Along those same lines, how big of an economic impact do you think that the Northern Beltline will make in Pinson? And Brad, we could start with you and then we'll move to Shannon.
I think the Northern Beltline is going to make a huge impact on our area. It's coming right through just north of the main business district of Pinson, and right there in the Palmerdale area, and it's just right there, and there's land there to be used, and I think it's going to make a huge economic impact on our area if we can show that we are a viable city to bring businesses.
Shannon, same question.
Right, I agree with exactly what Brad said. It's right there. There's lots of open land there. It's just begging for businesses to just come and build there. It'd be a perfect place for people to, jump off the interstate, go grab something to eat, get some gas, and hop back on and be on their way.
I want to follow up and kind of stay in this mode. Shannon, you touched on something I think that's important, and that is that Pinson draws from a surrounding area, draws from Locust Fork, people from Aniana and different surrounding areas that may be coming in to eat and shop there. When the Tribune, the Trussville Tribune, expanded coverage into Clay, first into Clay and then into Pinson, that was the theory behind all of it, is that this really is a market area. Trussville relies heavily on people from Clay and Pinson to shop here. The large shopping centers do the same thing. How important is it to create more communication between neighboring cities in terms of marketing and drawing more interest to the northeastern area of Jefferson County? Shannon, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it's very important that we have good relations with the communities that surround us, because we are going to have people, just like people from Pinson drive to Clay and shop, and we drive to Trussville and shop. That can go both ways, and I think that collaboration is very important, and it can't do anything but support all the cities, just like with the newspaper. And like you mentioned with the park, why not have collaboration with the local youths and have a huge community sports competition,
Yeah.
or and have all those cities. If we're limited to our 4 or 5 parks, softball fields, why not expand it into the other cities? My daughter played softball for several years, and we would go to tournaments, and we would be in one city for one game, drive to the neighboring city for another game, and all the cities, just they all benefit from that financially, with people spending and eating there in those areas.
Brad, same question for you. How important is it to communicate regionally with other cities?
I believe that as a city, ourselves, and such a young city, we have to make it extremely important that we think regionally first. Only then, by collaborating with the other cities, can we bring those businesses to our area. And it's not just about Pinson, it's about this area as a whole.
Changing gears a little bit, we mentioned to you before this forum that we wanted you to have the opportunity to ask each other questions. So we're going to move into that now. And Brad, I'm going to let you start and ask Shannon a question first.
Well, she's already answered the question.
Easy on
You want me to let her start, but you can think of something else?
Sure. Great idea.
You go first. You ask Brad.
Okay. Well, Brad and I had actually talked about this before. We were trying to figure out what we could ask each other, because I really feel like we both are on the same page with what we want with the city. Obviously, we wouldn't be running for this office if we didn't both want what's best for the city. So, this is not an I got you question, but I just wanted, to know, what is your vision for Pinson? Where do you see us being in 4 years when this seat comes up for election again? What would you like to see?
4 years is a short time frame, but to start with the 4 years, I would like to see us on a road to be in the things like the Butterbean Festival have kind of put us on the map. Our becoming a city has put Pinson on the map, but I would like to see us begin to grow like our neighboring sister cities have, like Trussville and Clay and Fultondale and Gardendale. Those are much more well-established cities, and I know we've got a long road to go on that. But at the same time, I still think that there's room for us to be the small town Pinson that everybody's always known. Mm-hmm. We can still have, I've traveled the country with my work, and there are cities and towns out there that have the big Walmarts and the Lowe's and all that stuff, but you wouldn't know it coming into town. It's still that Mayberry town that everybody wants to live in. And that's the vision I have, is to have that small town feel, the community, the people working together, the communication with all the community, and have that. That's the vision, is to have that small town community, but with the economic development.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Now you have the opportunity to ask her, or you can flip the same question around on her.
That is a great question. What is your vision of Pinson in the future?
Well, again, I have to agree with you. I do like very much the small town feel that we have, but we do definitely need the economic growth there. Something that I would like to see, especially here recently with our two of our contract deputies moving on into the schools and becoming resource officers, I would like to see the development of our own police department. And I know the city has already done some background work on that and have gotten some numbers together for that. And in order for that to happen, we do have to have the economic growth there. I would also like to see more people annexed into the city, again, just to help with that economic growth. And I do want one of those big anchor stores. I do want, to see the youth park grow and develop, possibly even have a basketball court for the community versus going to some of the local churches. Maybe expand there at the park and have some bigger areas at the park. And like you mentioned, have something for our teenagers to do. I mean, I have two teenagers of my own. One is getting ready to go off to college. I still have one at home, and they're always looking for something to do, and possibly even expand the splash pad area to for the older kids, but give them something to do here in their city versus going to some other city. But yet, like you said, keep that hometown feel.
Brad, I'm going to follow up on Shannon's answer with a question for you.
Okay.
She just mentioned Pinson possibly forming its own police department, which is one of the questions that we were going to ask. So, Pinson is a relatively safe city. We know that. We have safe communities in this part of the county. However, crime filters in to every city. How important is it for Pinson to form its own police department?
Well, I think as our city grows, it's going to become increasingly important. The current council has done their research, and they've kind of tabled that for now, and I'm sure with good reason. But I think it is going to become increasingly important. But as we research that going forward, and as we start to make progress towards that, I think it's also important to involve the community. In my neighborhood, we have a neighborhood watch, and I think it's important that that the city be a part of establishing those little groups in the communities that we live in, because it's been a huge help to us in our little neighborhood. So I think police department is going to be increasingly important to Pinson, and I think it's something that we should continue to pursue.
Okay, let's continue with things we hear from our Pinson readers, things that they seem to prioritize and have a lot of questions and want information on. The police, Pinson forming its own police department is one of the major topics that we hear from our Pinson readers. The second would be schools. The city of Pinson contributes financially to the county schools in the city limits and has formed an education foundation to further that cause. But the city has no control over the direction of the schools within the city. How important is it for Pinson to form its own school system? And if it is important, how would they fund that? Shannon, we'll start with you on this.
Well, being an educator, and especially being an educator at Pinson Valley High School, I would love nothing more than for us to have a brand new school. We have been very fortunate in the last 10 years or so to have some nice additions added onto the school, but when you're teaching in the 21st century and you're trying to use the technology that we have now in a 1970s classroom that has maybe 2 or 3 plugs in the room, it's just not feasible, and it just doesn't work very well. Unfortunately, I don't think financially Pinson's going to ever be able to form their own school system. I think we're going to be dependent on the Jefferson County Board of Education. And all that we can do there is to be advocates for our own school. I personally have sat down with Dr. Pouncey and spoken to him about the conditions of some of the classrooms, about the football field, our need for a practice field, the need for just cleaning up the school, and we just got to get out there and talk and be that squeaky wheel, and that's how we're going to get things done, is just to keep going to the board, talking to the superintendent, and just not letting down until they do what we ask them to do.
Brad, same question for you. How important is it for Trussville to form their own school system, and how would you fund it if they did that?
Well, I would hope we would form it in Pinson, but
Pinson would be.
in the immediate term, I don't think that is a high priority. I think the council has worked well with the school and supporting the school. All the schools there in Pinson, Kermit Johnson, Pinson Elementary, Rudd, and Pinson Valley High. The council has been very, very good to the schools, and I think that will continue. I think I wouldn't say never, but I don't think it's a high priority right now, but it is something that we should continue to consider as we grow as a city.
Let's stay with education. According to the Alabama State Department of Education, less than 7% of the 10th graders at Pinson Valley High School meet or exceed standards. Will that negatively impact attracting new residents with school-age children? Let's start with Brad.
One of the things that we considered when we moved to Pinson from Centerpoint was the school systems, and we asked our friends that lived in Pinson. We talked to people that we would meet that were from Pinson, and all of them had excellent things to say about the school system. I think that people look for a safe place for their kids as much as they do for the education. I know there have been changes at the school, and I think they're for the better, and I think the kids are going to benefit from that, and I think you're going to see that those percentages go higher. You're going to see that those percentages become the 20, 40, 50, 80% are going to exceed or meet those standards.
Shannon, you're in the trenches at the high school, so I know you have a good perspective on this.
Right, and I am on the school leadership team there at the high school, and we just met yesterday, as a matter of fact, and went over some numbers. It's from the ACT that the 10th graders take, which is the Aspire test. And what we have to remember about that Aspire test is you're giving this test to 10th graders who have not quite had all the material taught to them yet that they need to, but it is in preparation. So it's kind of a skewed data to look at that and say that they that only 7% meet or exceed. We have really good educators in all 4 of the schools, and we just have to continue to work and get those good teachers into the school and start making that difference. We've also had lots of changes in the educational system over the last few years where we've changed over into the Common Core system, and that's had a huge impact on educators, just trying to increase that rigor in the classroom and to push that to kids. And that's a difficult process when students aren't used to that type of rigor in their classroom to really get them to start progressing and showing on the testing. But that is something that will come. I mean, it's something that it is a process. It's not something that's going to change overnight. And just like Brad said, we've had a change in administration over the last year, and that impacts the school. I do believe it starts from the top and goes down, and they are pushing good instruction in the classrooms. They are pushing, increase your rigor, increase your DOK, increase your level 3 thinking, just trying to really get those students to think for themselves and to improve. And we are working on bringing those grades up on the ACT and bringing up those scores.
Brad, we're going to go back to you. What is Pinson's greatest asset, and what is Pinson's greatest liability?
I think Pinson's greatest asset is its people. Everywhere you go in Pinson, there's a friendly face. There's a how do you do. There's not there's no snobbishness going on. You see somebody in the supermarket, it's hey, how are you, whether they know you or not. So I think Pinson's greatest asset is its people. Probably its worst is Main Street. Main Street is, I would love to see Main Street revitalized, but as we both know, it's a flood zone, and it's going to be hard to do something there. But I would like to see something tried, because that's a part of Pinson's history, and I would like to see that something done there that people could come and see. Hey, this is Pinson.
Shannon, same question for you. Pinson's greatest asset and Pinson's greatest liability.
I'm going to agree with Brad. I do think the people are what make Pinson great. And just like he said, you can go anywhere and just start talking to the people and carrying on a conversation. They are very personable. The hometown feel, I think that is what I like about Pinson. That's why when, like I said, I moved to Pinson when I was 10, but when I had a choice to decide where to build my house and raise my family, I picked Pinson because of the hometown feel and the people that live there. And our greatest liability, I'm afraid, is the possibility of becoming stagnant and not growing. And that's going to happen if we don't get businesses there. We see in the surrounding areas, there's a couple of communities that surround us that are kind of stalemate. And we don't want that to happen in Pinson. So if we don't start getting some economic growth in the city, then that's where we could end up.
Well, we appreciate both of your time so much, and now we're going to give you the opportunity to make closing remarks. And I think we started with Shannon in opening, so we'll start with Brad and let you make your closing remarks first.
Brandon, Scott, I appreciate your time tonight, and I appreciate the people taking the time out to listen to what we have to say. And I look forward to the possibility of being a council member for Pinson. I think that we have a lot of work to do to grow Pinson, and I think if we work together, we can accomplish that.
Shannon, your turn.
Yes, thank you again for inviting us. And Brad, it was very nice to meet you. This is the first time I've met Brad, so it was nice meeting you. And I just want to say that, I care about Pinson. I care about the citizens of Pinson, and I want to move Pinson forward. And I just ask that on August 23rd that you get out there, no matter what community you live in. All the communities are going to have voting on August 23rd for their prospective seats and mayors. So get out there and place your vote and do your civic duty and help your city to grow, because that's what I intend to do for Pinson.
Well, thank you both again. And it will be a very interesting race in Pinson for both of these seats, the council seat and the mayor's position. And so we'll watch and see, and we hope that you'll take the opportunity to go back and listen to some of these answers and make a good decision on August 23rd. I don't know about you, but as we've done these, I continue to be impressed with people who take the initiative to do this.
I agree.
To run.
The quality of candidate in all three of the cities that we're covering has been outstanding.
Yes.
Everyone that's visited with us certainly has their community at heart and are putting it first, putting service above self. So that's what you want to see in the community, especially in local government. There's nothing closer to the people than local government.
That's right. And we're going to be back here with you tomorrow night with 2 more seats. We're going to have a seat in Trussville, the place 3 seat that has 3 candidates in it, and the 1 opposed seat in Clay. And we'll have those with us. And that, again, is at 6:30 and 8 p.m. tomorrow night.
That's right. We'll see you then.